And a little roundtable now to talk about the events of the week. And with us is Michael Fletcher, who covers the White House for the Washington Post, and Steve Chaggaris, who's the political director for CBS News. Well, gentlemen, it was a big week for Barack Obama. He got a very good reception to his speech to the joint session of Congress. But then along comes the budget. And guess what? It's going to cost a lot of money to get all this done. And he's not backing off. Even though he's had to put all this money into the stimulus, he's still going forward with some very expensive programs. Is he going to get this done, Steve?
Well, I mean, we've been in this town long enough to know that this has got to go through Congress. The interest groups and the lobbyists have to get their hands on this too. I think he'll get, some of what he wants to do through, but I think what we see today in terms of his blueprint is going to be a lot different than what we're going to see at the end of this.
Yeah, I agree with some of that. But interestingly enough, I think the crisis that this country faces and the kinds of numbers we've talked about to even just stabilize the banking system, people talk about hundreds of billions of dollars now and no one flinches. So I think in a strange way, Barack Obama may be able to harness this sense of crisis to push through more of this than we would have thought feasible 6, 7, 8 months ago. I mean, you look at this agenda, he's talking about, major expansion of healthcare coverage, cap and trade. Any one of these things would be a huge legislative accomplishment. This coming on the heels of this huge stimulus package. I mean, I think, he's really laying all the cards on, all the chips on the table here, and he may get more of this than we think.
Well, here's how huge it is in the words of Newt Gingrich, who I interviewed earlier this week. He said, "I think what the president has done is outline the boldest effort to remake America since LBJ's Great Society in 1965. He says the biggest fight will be over taxes, and the biggest fight over taxes will be over the energy taxes, which he's proposing." How tough is this going to be? Because we know he's not going to get much help from the Republicans. They haven't given him much help so far, and I think now that he's talking about raising these taxes, you're going to see even harsher language from the Republicans.
I think you also think about this. There's healthcare and energy that he wants to do as two of the main parts of this. These are issues that have been around for years, that presidents and Congresses have fought over for years and have not been able to do anything about. The question remains, because of the situation this country's in now, will he be able to make progress on these two issues? I think that's what we're going to have to wait and see.
And you talk about something like cap and trade, this energy sort of scheme that he has in place to try to reduce climate change. The idea is you would give permits to people who produce carbon, and they would have to pay for these things, right? And if they emit over a certain amount, then they would have to buy permit space from other people in order. And the whole idea is to keep carbon emissions at a certain level in a gross way. But some people could, violate the cap. Other people would go under. But as an aggregate, there would be a certain amount of carbon emission allowed in this country. So that's a revenue-generating tool when people pay for the right to, basically to emit carbon. So this is something that most Americans don't know a lot about. This has been talked about some in Congress, but not in a very detailed way. So it's going to be very, very hard, I think, to sort of generate the popular will, even though I think there's a growing sort of sense that climate change is a big issue. But I don't know that people are ready for cap and trade just yet.
It really is, though, kind of the if most of this gets through, it will be the end of the Reagan era, because this is the first time people have talked about needing to raise taxes in a long, long time.
Right, and I think what you see now, there's actually, I think, more reliance on government than we've seen in a long, long time. And I think what's happened on Wall Street, I think, is kind of soured people a bit on the private sector, and I think there's a little bit of a populist surge out there. This idea of raising taxes for people making over $250,000 a year, I think that's an easier sell now than it would have been, even 2 years ago, because of what people have seen happen. And there's less talk of kind of class warfare and more of a sense that, we need government on our side to sort of get through some of these tough issues.
But this goes even beyond that, because it's talking about even reducing the deduction you can take in charitable giving. There are going to be a lot of nonprofits that are going to be against this because it's mean their revenue sources.
Well, and that was a surprise to a lot of people. President Obama did not mention that when he was campaigning, and when he said he was going to roll back Bush's tax cuts, but he didn't talk about that other element. And I think you even heard Democrats yesterday saying this could be a problem in terms of charitable organizations. Where are they going to get their funding from if there's going to be this issue?
No, I think that's exactly right. I think the one piece in terms of raising the marginal tax rate on people, I think people can accept that. But when you talk about limiting deductions, and that's where you get other constituencies involved, and their bottom line is affected by that. So I think you'll see a big fight in that, and he could even lose on that piece of it.
Michael Fletcher, Steve Chaggaris, thank you for being with us on the Roundtable. You're watching Washington Unplugged.